You know that person who leaves you flat? The conversation was fine. Nobody fought, nobody was rude. You smiled, you nodded, you said the right things, and then they leave and you sink. You sit down and stare at nothing. A 20-minute chat and you need an hour to recover. It happens with the same few people every time. Not the loud ones, not the cruel ones, often the pleasant ones, the ones who seem easy. You walk away feeling like something was quietly taken. You can't point to the moment it happened, you just know the room costs more when they're in it. And you've started to wonder if the problem is you. Here's what's strange. The drain has almost nothing to do with how much you talked. It isn't about volume or noise or time. You can feel wiped after 10 quiet minutes with one person and energized after 3 loud hours with another. So it isn't social contact draining you, it's something happening underneath the contact. And here's the part nobody warned you about. The people who exhaust you are usually the ones you're working hardest to take care of. Over the next few minutes, I'll show you exactly what that work is. There's a name for the engine underneath this. It's called emotional labor. In plain terms, it's the effort of managing feelings, yours and theirs, to keep an interaction smooth. You do it without noticing. You read their face, you adjust your tone, you soften a sentence before it lands wrong. You track their mood and steer around it. With most people, this runs in the background, cheap and automatic. With certain people, the meter never stops. They give you nothing to push against, so you carry the whole exchange. You become the host, the audience, and the repair crew at once. This isn't a flaw in you. It's a system doing exactly what it was trained to do. It was just trained to do too much. The first layer is attunement. Some people grew up reading a room before they could read a sentence. If a parent's mood set the weather, you learn to scan for it early. Picture a kid who hears the front door and already knows from the sound of the keys what kind of evening it'll be. That child grows up able to feel a shift in someone before the person feels it themselves. Psychologist Elaine Hatfield called this emotional contagion. We automatically catch the feelings of people around us, like a yawn passing through a room. With certain people, you're not just catching their state, you're absorbing it and holding it for them. Their flatness becomes your flatness. You leave carrying a mood that was never yours. And here's the second layer most people miss. It's not the absorbing that drains you, it's the performing on top of it. Researcher Arlie Hochschild found that the deepest exhaustion comes from surface acting, showing a feeling you don't actually have. With the people who drain you, you're often doing both at once. You absorb their low mood, then perform a bright one over it so they stay comfortable. Think of the colleague who vents for 20 minutes while you nod warmly, swallowing your own tiredness. That gap between what you feel and what you show is where the energy goes. Not into the talking, into the distance between your face and your insides. So let me say the part you needed to hear years ago. You were told you were too sensitive, that you were antisocial, that you needed thicker skin, that something in you just couldn't handle people. None of that was true. You were never broken, you were never weak. What was actually happening is this. You were running a second job in every conversation. You were feeling for two. You were steadying the room while pretending the room was steadying you. Of course you were tired. Anyone would be. You weren't avoiding people because you didn't like them. You were recovering from work nobody saw you do. The exhaustion was never proof of a defect. It was proof of how much you were quietly carrying. You weren't too sensitive. You were carrying both sides of the conversation, and you did it so well that no one, including you, ever noticed the cost.
So here's what actually governs the drain. It isn't the person, it's the imbalance. Energy leaves you when the labor only runs one way. The people who don't drain you aren't easier or kinder. They're simply doing their half. They read you back. They catch your mood too. The exchange shares the weight, so neither of you carries it alone. And the people who drain you aren't villains. Most of them have no idea the work is happening. They feel cared for, and they're right. They just never learned to return it. The drain isn't a sign you should cut everyone off. It's a signal showing you exactly where the labor stopped being shared. So the next time someone leaves you hollow, don't ask what's wrong with you. Ask which side of the conversation you were carrying. You were never too much. You were just doing two people's work and calling it a personality. Here's my question for the comments. When you feel drained, is it the absorbing that gets you or the performing on top of it? Pick one. I read every reply. If this explains something you've never had words for, subscribe. That's what every video on this channel is trying to do. Next time, we look at the opposite pattern, the people who feel guilty the moment they rest, why doing nothing can feel like a crime.